Good morning, Melissa.
Good morning. How are you, Heidi?
Good, thank you.
Good.
How are you?
Good. I think I'm ready.
Yeah. Good. We have Janet and Deltra. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Heidi.
And Celeste is coming in, and Noemi is here. Okay.
Heidi, are you the facilitator?
Yes.
I'm just here. I'm from Resolve Center for Dispute Resolution and Restorative Justice in Southern Oregon. And I'm just here for an hour this morning, and then I'm going to bonk out to another meeting. I'm an executive director, and that's what I have to do. But I did want to come and see what was going on here strategically. So that's why I'm here.
Listen in. Good. Well, I think the first hour you'll get sort of the nuts and bolts of what we're talking about. So great. Good.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I live in Corvallis, Deltra, so
Yeah.
kind of in the middle of Southern and Northern.
I
It's been a long time.
taught at the university for many years. So
Yeah, yep. It's right down the road.
down the road. Yep. That's great. It's great.
Yeah, good.
I hope you're getting some rain. We're not getting enough rain and snow and stuff. It's dry.
Yeah, it's dry. I was saying though, I'm going to appreciate a walk in some sunshine today. So
Yeah, that's true.
yeah,
That's right.
yeah. Hi, Celeste. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Celeste.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well.
Are you in Portland this morning, Celeste?
Yep. As always, as I am every day.
kind of bunkered down, huh? Not a whole
Yeah.
lot. Yeah. Yep. All right. Gotta pull up our agenda so I stay a little focused today. Let's see. So Melissa, are you going to give Karen and I co-host so we can put folks into groups? Good morning, Brian.
Yes, either that or I can do it.
Oh, okay. You want to try it? We'll be your backup support.
Perfect. Thank you. And I invited Lindsay Schoonover to help me out as well. We're providing support for each other as we go forward in council meetings. So this is our first one.
Great. That's great. It's nice to have a partner.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Great.
Let's see. I will make you a co-host.
Just in case.
And
Morning,
yeah.
Good morning, John. Folks are slowly coming in. Good morning, Cord. Janet, it's nice to see you. I think last time you were on the phone. You have some lovely festive lights in the background. I think we should all take note. It's kind of that time of year. Adds a little bit of light, hope, joy. Love it. Great. Well, we're waiting for Chair Karen.
Exactly.
Where's Chair Karen? I think we're going to be a small subcommittee today.
Yeah.
Small can be mighty.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, Brian, what do you think? Shall we give it a minute?
Yeah, let's give it another minute since
Chair Karen?
no, yeah, Chair Karen literally like, I mean, well, I guess welcome and meeting goals. She knows what we want to do, so, but we can give it literally 20 seconds.
Okay.
Here's Janine.
Oh, good. Great.
Awesome. Heidi, do you have Karen's? I don't have a cell phone for her. Maybe Melissa or somebody else does, but maybe we can shoot her a text. But I think we should get started.
Okay. I can kick us off here,
You
Brian.
want to kick us off? Yeah.
Yeah. And great. Well, welcome everyone to the Youth Development Council Subcommittee Strategic Planning meeting. It's great to see you all. It's been a little while, and it's always nice to see folks during the holiday time. I appreciate the connection, even if it's just through Zoom. So today we're going to spend some time. We've been spending time as a subcommittee over the last while. I'll say while because time has become a slightly different animal. Really getting kind of focused in on what are the core strategy, what's the core framework that we want to use for strategic planning going forward. And there's been quite a bit of work done. We've been spending time on it, and there's some updates that Brian and Cord are going to walk us through to really kind of analyze today during our time together, a revised framework for the strategic planning process. So we're going to spend some time doing that, and we'll break into small groups to dive into those categories just a little bit more. We'll break into 2 small groups today, and then we'll talk a little bit about the process going forward, propose the process going forward, and get your thoughts for that. How's that sound for our time together today? Sound good? Awesome. Why don't we do a round of introductions? Let's do a round of introductions, your name, kind of where you are, if you want to stay in an organizational panel, your representation on the subcommittee. And then if you're a guest in the room, we'll first start with subcommittee and then we'd love to introduce guests as well. And given that we are in a time of year of thankfulness, gratitude, would love if you want to share one thing you're grateful for today. One thing you're coming into today on December 3rd with a little gratitude for. And I'll go ahead and start. I'm Heidi East McGowan. I'm a consultant and have the joy of facilitating our work together. I am in Corvallis, Oregon. That's home. Today, I have to say today, right at this moment, I'm grateful for some sunshine because I'm planning to get a walk in today. And since we're all bunkered in, it feels so good to get out. Celeste, why don't we jump over to you?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Celeste Jansen, and I'm the chair of the Youth Development Council. In my day job, I work at Education Northwest, and I focus on youth development best practices. And I'm grateful to be here. This work is near and dear to my heart. I am also grateful. I have a 5-month-old puppy that just keeps me on my toes and adds so much joy to my life. So I'm grateful for her. And I apologize to you all if you hear crazy things going on in the background because 5-month-old puppies are intense.
Love that. Thanks, Celeste. Janet, and then we'll jump to you, John.
Good morning. Janet Ahrens, council member. And I'm actually really grateful that my 93-year-old father is hanging in there in independent living. He's healthy. And he's actually engaged to a lovely 87-year-old lady on the 5th floor.
That's great. Thanks, Janet.
I'm John Teague, Chief of Police in Kaiser. Been on the YDC since its inception, and then the Juvenile Justice Advisory Committee before that. Thankful I have 5 adult children, some with grandchildren, some with my grandchildren, and they all live.
I think it was live locally.
Yeah.
Cut out there. Yeah, nice. Okay. Great. Thanks, John. Janine and then Karen. We're just doing introductions and 1 gratitude for today. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. I am in foggy Umpqua, Oregon today, and excited to see you all and be engaged in this conversation. I am grateful today. I was going to say my pups, but I'm going to say my horses, because I'm hoping that the sun will break out and that I can actually go for a ride today, because I realize I have not been outside the house for probably way too long.
Thanks, Janine. Karen?
Good morning, everyone. Sorry I missed the introductions. I had a meeting to spill over. Karen Spencer, heading up this committee or subcommittee, I should say. And just so I guess I'm really grateful for my family. I got my husband and my mom is now with me. And it's just been, you know, I think as everybody would say, a challenge and a delight to have her. And I'm just glad that she's well and able to get around. So it's been wonderful to have her.
That's great. Thanks, Karen. Let's introduce guests and then we'll jump to staff. Deltra, since I can see you.
Hi, my name is Deltra Ferguson. I am the Executive Director for Resolve Center for Dispute Resolution and Restorative Justice in Southern Oregon. And I'm a guest today just to find out what the strategic planning is around the YDD. We're funded by, we have a program that's funded by the YDD. We work using restorative justice in our schools and with juveniles in juvenile justice. So we're invested very much in what the committee's doing. And I'm grateful for that I still have a house that's standing. In Southern Oregon, it's, we not only have a virus, but boy, did we get blown away by those fires, and there's so much pain here right now. So we're trying to get through, and yeah, it's tough times here, but we'll get through. Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
thanks for joining. Noemi.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Noemi Rios, and I work for Oregon Department of Education's procurement unit. So if your entity gets a grant or a contract from ODE, it's most likely coming from me through the help that I work with Brian and his team. And I am grateful that I can have my son, who is a 4th grader, go to the YMCA every day for school so that I can focus on work. And I know that's not possible for all individuals, but I'm grateful that Salem Kaiser School District has that option.
Nice. Thanks, Noemi. Star or Brian, are you able to jump in to join us?
I am. So my name is Brian Barron. I'm the director of the Coos County Juvenile Department. Willing to attend or like to attend today if it's open. I did get an invite to it, but I got out of court early today. I do not have access to a camera. I normally would turn that on because I personally hold myself more accountable when I know you can see me. Unfortunately, I'm not at a computer where I can do that at the moment, so I apologize on the front end. I'm grateful to have a job, candidly. I'll just leave it there. So.
Thanks, Brian. Star?
Yes, I can. Brian, you're making me laugh. I know Brian and enjoy talking to Brian. My name is Star Felty, and I am the Youth Services Division Manager in Lee County. And I am listening in. I'm interested in learning a little bit more. So I appreciate being here. Thank you for having me. I am having technical difficulties with my camera and hope at some point that it will start working. So you may get to see me soon. It cycles. It doesn't like Zoom for some reason. So hopefully it will click in soon.
The ongoing friendship we continue to develop with Zoom. Thank you for joining us. Melissa and Lindsay. Melissa first, go ahead.
I'll go first. Melissa Gallardo. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am, I think, the newest member to the Youth Development Division, and loving it. So glad to be here today and happy to see all the council members and the guests. Thank you. My gratitude is for the neighborhood I live in Northeast Salem. It's the Inglewood neighborhood, and I'm inspired by the festive lights behind Janet because some of our neighbors they just started a what is it called? A Keep 15th Lit or something, and they bought a bunch of Christmas lights and distributed them to all the neighbors to put up outside the houses so that our neighborhood is all lit up in these dark times, dark for many ways. So grateful for that. And let's see, Lindsay, did you want to jump in?
Sure, yeah. So my name is Lindsay Schoonover. I am the administrative specialist for the Juvenile Crime Prevention Team with Youth Development Division. And I'm here today to kind of observe and provide some backup help if need be, backup support. I'm in Turner today, so the internet's kind of iffy, so my camera's not on, and I'm going to try to do some other work if I can in the background. I am thankful today for being able to still work during these times, and that's it for now. Sorry, my voice is not good today.
Oh, thanks, Lindsay. Cord, and then Brian will jump to you. Cool.
All right, hi, good morning. My name is Cord Bucher. I'm a Special Projects Manager and Interim Chief of Staff for the Youth Development Division. And, I've been like trying to think of the thing I'm most grateful for. I feel a lot of gratitude for a lot of different things. I feel especially fortunate in this time, given a lot of other people's experiences, but I will say, particularly following Thanksgiving holiday, I'm really happy with my parents who live in Louisiana are being pretty diligent in staying safe and staying away from my sister, who is maybe approaching it differently and has 2 kids that love to spread germs. So I'm really thankful that they've remained healthy and happy through all this stuff going on.
Thanks, Cord.
Thanks, Cord, and everyone else. Yeah, but Brian Detman, Director of Youth Development Division, really appreciate everyone calling in. It's great to have a few guests this morning. So we're excited to talk through some strategic planning progress, I suppose, that we've made. And I am grateful for, well, I'm grateful to be able to spend as much time as I'm able to spend with my immediate family, my wife and 13, almost 14-year-old son. Now, to be honest, spending this much time with a teenager has its downsides, part of which is he doesn't really want to be spending this much time with his parents. But there are definitely lots of glimmers, not just glimmers, lots of moments, really special moments. Yesterday, and I shouldn't say this, but like we have a little routine of like playing soccer in the house, which is not advised to anyone, but he said that he said yesterday, well, if you play with me, Dad, then I'll give you a hug. And I was like, okay. So that happened. I've always yes to that question, even though the risk of things being broken and destroyed is always there too. So with that, I don't know, Heidi, do we want to take it to this sort of revised framework, or how do we want to?
So yeah, maybe Brian, if you just even want to share sort of what's happened, the context that will, some of the conversations happening.
Yeah,
and
happy
then
to do that. And yeah, Thanks, Heidi. Yeah, happy to do that. And I'll try to be brief because I know Celeste doesn't have a ton of time. And Celeste is our overall Youth Development Council chair, so we want to get as much of her time as possible. And I don't know, Cord or Melissa, maybe one of you, not at the moment that I say, you can share the PowerPoint that we developed. I could probably do it, but if one of you can be, maybe it's Cord, can be ready to do that. I know that
I'll share it.
Melissa shared the PDF in advance a few days ago, so you have a little bit of context. But the quick context for what we're going to share today is that our last meeting of this committee was, I don't know, a couple of months ago, roughly, and we shared with the group some kind of overarching priorities that I'd been thinking about and wanted to share and get some feedback on those priorities from the committee, and got some really helpful input. So what we want to talk about and discuss today is how we've taken your feedback on those priorities and made some revisions, but also wanted to let you know that in the intervening time over the last couple of months, I've had the chance to have conversations with the governor's office, and so the governor's office has had a chance to weigh in on these priorities and is really strongly aligned with what we're thinking. And the governor has had convened over the last couple of months a racial justice council, which you may have heard about or may have some knowledge of, to focus on really increasing equity and, frankly, addressing inequity and disparity that I think we see throughout our systems. But specifically in the education arena, she's gathered folks to talk about challenges that we've all experienced as a result of COVID, as a result of fires, the kind of broader racial reckoning and racial justice piece is also there as a critical issue. So this Racial Justice Council is coming together to really maintain a focus around racial justice and equity, and to figure out how to achieve some lasting change and real outcomes around that issue. So that group has convened a few times over the last few months, and more specifically, there's a subcommittee, an education recovery subcommittee of that council that has convened, and I've had a chance to present to that group a couple of times over the last couple of months. So as we share these revised priorities, I want you to know that I've also shared some of these ideas with that group, and they've weighed in and given us some real helpful input and feedback related to our priorities, and frankly also helped us determine some strategies and ideas for implementation in the next biennium, policy ideas, legislative ideas, other practices that we might drive forward. So there's some real good information that we've been able to glean from those conversations. And we want to keep our conversation today at a pretty high level, but have this PowerPoint presentation, which we'll share with you today, that I think reflects the feedback from this body, some of the learning and information we've gained from these committee meetings, and is all really feeding towards, I think, our plan for the coming biennium. So that's the quick context that I just wanted to share with the group. Heidi or Karen or others, are there questions or comments before we get into the presentation? Thanks, Cord, for sharing. I think that was the right time. Not, I see you all. If you don't have questions, let's dive in. Cord is, yeah. So the place we wanted to start, and again, for those who are newer to our conversations and our guests, we obviously want to just quickly share our mission, vision, and values. These were discussed over the last roughly year at the strategic planning committee meeting, and the mission, vision, values, and beliefs were all approved at our last council meeting in September. So we just wanted to put these in front of you all just as a reminder of this, like, is the sort of bedrock of our plan. And these are things that folks passed at the last meeting, but wanted to put them in front of you. And again, with guests on the phone, I think, or on the Zoom call, it's helpful for you all to see how we're articulating these elements for the division and the council in a shared way. Does anyone want to read the mission and vision? I don't know, make it a little interactive here. John Teague, I saw your hand go up. Do you want to read those two pieces? We are on mute, so we can't hear you if you're talking. Oh, John, you're
By the
still
PowerPoint, but now I've got it.
Oh, you got, okay.
Okay, mission, the YDD's mission is to align systems and leverage community partnerships to ensure integrated, measurable, and accountable services for youth ages 6 through 24. YDD programs support educational and career success, focus on crime prevention, and reduce high-risk behaviors. Our vision is that all of Oregon's youth have the opportunity to thrive and achieve their full potential.
Thanks, John.
Bet.
Appreciate that. I appreciate that, Chief. On the beliefs, on the values and beliefs, any quick readers? We can go fast here.
I'll read that our values are equitable access, equal opportunity, youth-centered approaches and results, inclusion, and innovation.
Thanks, Karen. Do you want to do the beliefs too, since you're going?
We believe all youth should have equitable access to supports, services, and opportunities. We believe in anti-racism. We believe all youth should be supported without either replacing or usurping family roles. We believe in identifying innovative avenues for youth success.
Awesome, thank you. Cord, do you want to take us to the next slide? All right. Heidi, do you want to take this?
Sure.
The timeline?
Okay, Brian.
Yeah.
So, we've had this timeline, this end goal of having a draft plan by March. So if we work back from that, during the month of December, obviously we're meeting today to discuss these priorities. There will be a YDC meeting, I believe, next week-ish, to that you all can talk further a little bit about these priorities, and then also have some involvement and voice in this process by Brian having a conversation with Danny Santos about having a conversation with the Tribal State Government to Government Summit coming up at some point. And then also the Legislative Commission on Indian Services. So just to have tribal consultation into these priorities as they're emerging and developing. And then in January, distribute these priorities with specific questions for additional consideration through some of the subcommittees of YDC. So kind of, you could call it shopping it around, socializing it, floating some of these, but getting some targeted feedback, including the, and specifically meeting with the youth committee to again, hear youth voice in this work. And then also with the YDC committee chairs. And then February, we'd like to talk with you. We'll spend a little more time at the end of our time together talking about having a YDC and a YDD retreat, a little longer time, maybe 2 days, maybe a half day. We haven't quite thought through that, but to review a draft plan and to really dive in and brainstorm and discuss measures of success and getting us to the finish line in March. That's the training goal for our run together team.
Yeah. Thanks, Heidi. Any questions about that or comments? We know it's, I don't know, aggressive maybe isn't the right word, but there's a fair amount to accomplish, but we've come pretty far, and we've been at this for a while, and in the midst of the pandemic and so on. I feel like this is realistic, and we're going to be charging forward. Thanks, Heidi. All right, next slide. I know folks want to get to the substance here, and Celeste, I know you only have about 15 more minutes. Just FYI, Celeste and I are going to follow up with a conversation later this afternoon. So I found some time. Oh yes, my Zoom does this. Funny sound. Is this better? Yeah, when I have my speakers or my headphones plugged in, it's not so ideal. So I'll take myself off the headphones. So we presented, as I said, 3 priorities in our last committee meeting, late September, if I'm not mistaken. These are the 3 priorities we shared at that point. Got some good feedback from the group. We wanted to just share with you what we had originally brought to the committee, and it's priority 1, improve outcomes for vulnerable youth. To be clear about what we mean about vulnerable youth, youth of color, low income and rural youth, on pathways they co-determine. This idea of youth choice is an important idea that I think you see articulated in our vision and values. Priority 2, bring additional resources / funding and drive new policies and reform that drive youth engagement and re-engagement, structural improvement, and system change. That was a lot of words. I think we heard from this committee like, whoa, there's a lot going on in that sentence. So you'll see in the revision that we've tried to pull some things apart around priority 2 to make it a little clearer. And then priority 3, strengthen youth development division and youth development council cohesion and inclusion. So those were kind of draft ideas that we brought, and we've now come up with some revisions that we wanted to share with you today. So we've taken the 3 and made them 4. Advanced structural and system reform being our first priority. I think perhaps kind of a newer, not a new idea, but I think an area as a council and as a division that we feel like in this moment, it's important for us to push harder on and more explicitly around structural and system reform. We'll have a chance to kind of talk about what this means a little bit later today. So I just want to share that as an idea. You see it articulated, I think, in the first 3 the 3 priorities we shared earlier, and we'll actually show you a side by side of these here in a second. But wanted to be explicit about that. Policies and partnerships that expand and leverage resources. One of the pieces of feedback we heard from the subcommittee a couple of months ago was the idea that partnerships and our collaboration was important. So we tried to make explicit this idea of driving policies, but doing so in a collaborative fashion that then expand resources like funding, but also leverage capacity and leverage resources that might not be strictly financial. Priority 3, grant making that supports youth-centered pathways and practices. We know that grant making is a real central focus of the division. It's one of the main levers we use to drive our work, probably the primary lever frankly. So wanted to articulate that was the lever to produce the results, the outcomes that we are all invested in creating, and also affirm identity and safety as key pieces of that grant making work. And then priority 4, you saw what was priority 3, YDD and YDC, cohesion, inclusion, and communication. We've added a little bit to build capacity and achieve priorities, goals, and measurable outcomes. This speaks to some extent to, I think, our shared work between the council and the division, speaks to the need for us to have our the right in aligned capacity, to have some of the hard conversations around equity internally, for example, and then to also communicate and do storytelling in, I think, a more strategic way. So those are the 4 priorities that we've arrived at. Cord, if you can take us to the next slide, I'll show these things side by side. so you can see kind of how we revised these things. And the next slide, and we can come back to this slide if it's helpful. We have a couple of questions which we'd like to ask and use as discussion points for the next, I don't know, Heidi, you can help me with the time frame here. Maybe it's the next 15 or so minutes, but the two questions we wanted to ask and discuss, and maybe, and again, maybe we're going to go into small groups, I can't remember, how these priorities and revisions capture what we want to achieve, and what adjustments you would suggest. And maybe, Melissa, maybe you could drop the 4 priorities into the chat or something. That might be helpful so that people can think about that. Heidi, how do we want to move forward? Do we want to do a small group discussion about this?
Yeah, Brian, we were thinking just stay in full group, maybe for about 10 minutes, and then we'll break into small groups to dive in. Maybe one group will take the first 2 priorities, the second group will take the last 2 priorities. So we kind of split up a little bit, but thought for let's maybe, if we have, if it works in 10 minutes, just to think about that question you just posed.
Will you go to the question slide, Cord?
All of a sudden I'm like, whoop, yeah, how do these priorities and revisions capture what we want to achieve as a council and an agency, and what adjustments would you suggest?
Thanks, Melissa, for dropping those. Melissa put those into the chat. If folks want to open their chat, you can see the priorities.
Well, this is John. It seems to me that the first priority, well, one comment real quick. If these are priorities, is priority 1 the first priority, or are they enumerated just for convenience?
Great question, John. I think they're enumerated for convenience. We haven't prioritized one over the other at this point.
Yeah. Seems like to me the first priority kind of begs the question. We're making the assumption that we need to reform.
Mm-hmm.
Well, once we reform it, part of 1 would continue to suggest that we still need reform. So maybe it should be something like identify structural and system weaknesses and advance reform. I mean, part of reformation is identifying the need. So.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah, I will just say one of the things that I've heard over the last couple of months and being part of the Education Recovery Committee, which is then a subset of the Racial Justice Council that the governor has been convening, is that lots of conversation and frankly statements around around the need to reform and to advance change around some of our systems, right? When we see disparities, that's a sign of failure. When we see needs of communities not being either understood or met. So there's, I think, a lot of energy, I'll just describe it that way, around change and some ideas around what that might look like.
Yeah, just to be clear, I don't argue that there isn't a need for reform. I firmly believe there is. I just think when we're throwing this up, we shouldn't bake the answer into the question.
Thanks, John.
Something.
Could I offer something to the group as a guest? Thank you. Again, I'm from Resolve. We're in this Southern Oregon, and we practice restorative justice in our schools and in juvenile justice. And we've been doing this for a while with some YDD funding. And one of the things that we've identified in working and so forth is that a lot of our work, not all of it, some of it is, anyway, a lot of our work is oriented toward systems change. And so I'm going to say it simply, it is. And the biggest difficulty is, how do you measure results? How do you, when you are doing systems change work, and in ways that are legitimate, in ways that are illustrative of the value and the efficacy of the work. That's very, very important. And I really don't want to back away from that. But I will tell you it's difficult. Most of the work that is happening follows a case management model in our community, the kind of the social work that's happening and so forth, and the helpful work. And that case by case or case management model is good too. It's complementary. It should be done, but it's very, very measurable because you're working with a youth and you're following that youth, and you can carry on and count what is happening and the changes that have taken place. The systems change is much harder, and I hope that this committee will try to tackle that maybe and help us who are on the boots on the ground folks to have a real clear sense about what the expectations are. We would appreciate that. That would be tremendous. So that's my input. Thank you.
Other reflections on how these revisions reflect your work, or comments? And Celeste, I want to acknowledge your comment that you're talking about the challenge around how do we measure results over a 2-year grant cycle when it really does take longer. Yeah.
So I guess I have another one then. It seems like number 4 reflects like a family conversation. Like maybe we're airing our dirty laundry or something. I'm just wondering how public these priorities are and whether that is ever actually satisfied and answered. Kind of, it's a continuing battle, I would think. Anyway, that's my take on it.
Thanks, Chief. I wonder what folks have to say about that, who have a longer history than me.
That's funny. I appreciate that you said that, John, because I do think when we're talking publicly and we're trying to get stakeholders energized about the work of the council and the division, the 4th one is really more an internal process, or things that we want to strengthen, and it doesn't feel like it is really external, and maybe therefore maybe we can have sort of the first 3 as external that we want to share, and the 4th one is just an additional goal that the staff and council want to work on.
Is there, and maybe this is the intent of priority number 2, but is there an opportunity to expand the cohesion and inclusion with more of our direct partners? I'm thinking ODE specifically, as thinking about the Student Success Act and the alignment within that, or is that diluting the intent of that priority, and that actually exists within the priority number 2?
Thanks, Janine. I'll try to answer this, and if Cord or others. I think that the second priority is meant to capture or include those sort of for external partnerships, collaborations, whether they be grantees or the interagency work. So I think that and to Chief Teague's point, yeah, the 2 is sort of more the external work, and then 4 is a little more the internal. So I think that's a fair observation / sort of point about what we're trying to articulate.
Brian, I'd like to add on to what you've said. The communication piece in the fourth one was an external facing component to it. What we talked about was the fact that once folks know about the YDD, what it does, they're on board with it, but there's a lot of awareness building among the legislature and the community around the YDD and the YDC activity. So that is an external facing item.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
Yeah, it's Janet. I agree with that. And there's, always a little bit of tension between transparency, accountability, and what product we actually have coming out with the grants and the community work and the collaboration. So it's a provocative question. And I think we need to make sure that we're building in accountability and outcomes for ourselves, even on internal work, just as we are for our external work and our grant making.
Well, then I would suggest priority 4 needs some greater clarity that we're talking about, because I get what you're saying, Karen. I remember that now, that we have become rather insular, and maybe 4 needs some greater clarity that we're talking about building relationships outside of the YDD. And then, of course, internal relationships is just kind of part of that.
I'll just say that the inclusion of communication there was really important to me, because my experience just in some of the day-to-day work with ODE and other agency partners is we spend a lot of time just explaining who we are and what we do, who the council is versus who the division is. And I'm excited because I think there is increasing awareness and understanding, but we're still kind of at square one a lot of times. I mean, I was just yesterday talking with the ODE rules coordinator about these administrative rules we're bringing for the first read tomorrow. And he said, well, I need to check to see if the State Board of Ed needs to vote on these rules. And I'm like, absolutely they don't. Here's our statutes, and so we're still kind of like, here are the statutes that define who we are and what our authority and agency is as a council and as a division, and which was fine. But given that we're now, I guess about 6-7 years old for the division and 8 for the council, it feels like we ought to be at a point where folks just know, they hear youth development division or youth development council, they know what that is. So that's to me worth including as a strategic priority, is just broader public and partner awareness and understanding of who we are and what we do.
I really agree with that, because I think that's going to be key for our legislative engagement, and we might need some support, external support for marketing, who we are, what we look like, and what we achieve, and why it's critical work.
So, Cord, I think the way you just described that was perfectly clear.
I wish I typed it into the chat so we could just copy and paste it.
Hey, man, it'll be in the recording.
Is that, I'm just thinking out loud here, but is that, and not necessarily trying to add more, is that important to articulate as its own priority, this awareness and communication piece?
I think it is, because it's the foundation of our springboard of being able to get what we need and get the outcomes that we're responsible for achieving and supporting. If people don't know who we are and what we do, it makes it tough. You spend all your time explaining who you are and describing what you do, and you never get to the point where you're actually talking about needs and outcomes and change.
I agree with Janet wholeheartedly. In the work that I do, working closely with ODE, our ESDs, our school districts, it is always, I joke that we're the sad stepchild and always trying to make people understand that we're actually a viable and strong division within the overall, you know, P20 spectrum, in that, and doing very important work. So I agree with all that's been said.
So Brian, I'm wondering if, for in the interest of time, if we want to step through the next slides with some key questions, and then we can split into 2 small groups to talk about this. Clearly hearing from you all that you want to consider adding a 5th priority. So or at a minimum, really clarifying that 4th one to talk about how do you articulate externally your story? How do you share? How do you clearly communicate and raise awareness about the work you do?
Mm-hmm.
So that while we don't have that reflected here today, I think our hope was we could maybe walk through each of these a little bit more, spend a little time diving into them in preparation for having a deeper dive later on in February. Does that sound okay to move that direction?
Mm-hmm.
Chair Karen? Okay, awesome.
Deltra, did you have a question or comment, or was that a thumbs up?
That was a farewell wave. And I'm wishing you all good luck in this process. And thank you again. Take care.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, now we're a little smaller group. We also have an additional person. Maybe we could do a quick introduction of Fallon Stewart, just to say hi. Maybe you could, Fallon, let us know what organization you're with. And
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry that I had to join late there. Had some things come up this morning. I am a program supervisor for the Maslow Project in Southern Oregon. We've been working with this, I guess, group for several years now. So I work with our school-based programs, but we have we're basically a case management structure. And we provide case management to homeless youth and families for all of our Southern Oregon region. So lots of work being done. So I was really resonating with some of what's being said about obviously the case management model. And it's very interesting to see work done. Obviously I'm just here as a guest, but watching as things come into view for our state. And obviously this is a very pertinent time to be involved in these types of conversations to advance the work. And yeah, I'm just really excited to be here.
Awesome. We appreciate your dialing in and your participation, really do.
Thank you.
And also another Justin. Justin, since you've just jumped on, and Fallon, we just wanted to have you do the quickest of introductions. I think you're on mute.
Yep, there we go. Justin Llewellyn, the School Improvement Coordinator with the Willamette ESD out of Salem, Oregon.
Awesome. Thank you for joining. We're about to move to the next part of our meeting where we're going to break, I think, into some small groups. Heidi, the one question that I'm wondering about is, and maybe Cord and Melissa and Lindsay, that's why we have all of us trying to manage all the logistics and the technical pieces of this. Somehow or other, in order to do the small groups, people are going to need to be looking at this this PowerPoint presentation. Yeah. So I don't know if if we'll have a staff member in each group that will then maybe share their screen or something. Yeah. We just want to make sure we can do that.
Sure, Brian. So Karen and I are going to split into each of the groups, and we have the PowerPoint in front of us. So either staff or Karen or we can see if we can share the screen.
Lovely.
Karen, do you want to take the first 2 priorities and I'll take the last 2? Okay, great. And we can just review the questions when we're together. We probably are only going to have 15 to 20 minutes to give a little time to talk about the retreat. Does that sound okay? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thanks, Karen. And Melissa's got us ready to go.
All right, I'm going to open all the rooms, and I think you will all find yourself in a breakout room. We'll see in about 15 minutes or so.
Thanks, Melissa.
Yes. Good morning, Thabiti. Welcome to the meeting. Can you hear me okay? Oh, you're on mute.
I can, thank you, sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm so glad to see you. Everyone just started breakout rooms, so I would like to pop you into one of those breakout rooms.
Okay,
All
thank you.
right, thanks. Okay, I think I just added you, so you should see.
Okay, I'll join it.
All right, thanks so much. We'll see
Okay,
you
I'm in room 1, okay.
12. Perfect.
We were mid-sentence.
I hope Janet said yes.
We do. Did you say yes, Janet? Sure. Love it. Thank you. Well, thanks everyone. We know there was not enough time there, and we are planning to dive into all of this a lot deeper when we do our retreat. But just for initial thinking and the opportunity to dive in, would love to just hear what your small group, kind of a brief summary, super brief summary of what you talked about. And Janet, would you mind sharing for the group that I was in just a brief summary, and then the others can weigh in? You're on mute there, Janet. Oh, still on mute.
You're on mute, Janet.
It was brilliant too. It was brilliant.
I bet.
Do we want to be more restrictive in how people use grant money to achieve certain outcomes? Do we want to be more directive? And the discussion was around leaning the other way, that having people target outcomes and that we provide, and that they have their own community and their own pathways to be able to get to those outcomes. And I don't know that that's a decision, but that was the conversation. Part of the conversation is we talked a little bit about that because we have a gang prevention grant, and we talked about finding other terminology for that, and talk about populations and communities and needs instead of labeling. We talked about the need for resourcing outcomes research for the grantees because of how expensive it is. And if you want something more than counting numbers, then we need to have another shift or another look at how we can support getting the kind of information we want out of the funding. What else did we do? Oh, we talked about the, so Chief, the fantastic resiliency work that we did, that whole document and all those strategies and all that work. I think it's time to pull it out and take a look at it and see where we can take those guidelines and that research and consider implementing them in some grant work that we want to see done. Did I miss anything? I probably did.
So just for context, we talked about priority number 3, grant making that support youth center. It's all good. Grant making that support youth center pathways and practices that produce demonstrable outcomes and affirm identity and safety.
Okay.
Anything, any others in Janet's group would like to share that to add
Real
in?
quick, Heidi, I mean, I think the conversation around resiliency and prevention were important words mentioned that I just would like to throw out. And I know that as we talked about the kind of gang language that we want to shift, you know, I appreciated the BD talking about how in shifting, both I think our language, which Janet was making the point about, but also ensuring that programs are thinking, I guess, in a more of a holistic family supports kind of fashion is critical. It's sort of like upstream and prevention approaches. The BD, I don't know if that captures what you were talking about, but I think that connects to with what Fallon was saying about resiliency.
Thanks, Brian. Karen, you all had the first 2 priorities. Would you like to share what your conversation was?
Yeah, so John and I are going to tag team. He's going to talk about priority number 1, and then I will talk about number 2.
So I learned a little background about priority 1. Cord said that in some of the higher level conversations, there's been no little discussion about the need for sure enough system reform. I suggested earlier in priority 1 that probably need to identify what needs to be, and if there needs to be reform. He assured me that many people think that there does need to be because problems do exist. I earlier suggested we say something of the effect of identify structural and system weaknesses and advance reform. Where we landed as a group was to identify structural and system problems and advance reform. Problems is easily understood, and you can see them at the local and at the state level. And then we need to use our grant resources locally and statewide and move on. So priority 1, we're suggesting be identify structural and system problems and advance reform.
For priority 2, it largely resonated with our group. One factor that seemed to be, or element that seemed to be missing, was alignment of resources, aligning, basically getting all of the dominoes in the right row, was the impression that I had. We just started talking about what adjustments might be made to the priority. I don't think we reached a conclusion, but 2 options that we came up with were align policies and partnerships to expand and leverage resources. The other one, which is other word instead of align, was coordinate. So, which is also in the statute, as Cord pointed out. So coordinate policies and partnerships to expand and leverage resources. I tend to like verbs at the beginning of things just as an action. So I would be happy with any verb in that zone, so to speak. And then if anybody else who's in the breakout wants to add anything, feel free to do so.
Those are some great suggestions for sort of adjustment and clarity and focus. And for those first 2 priorities. Thank you, Karen and team, and John. So we're coming towards the end of our time. Again, just want to say this was mostly an opportunity to dive into these 4 priorities, knowing that there's going to be some additional thinking and voice put into them in advance of us coming back together, which is what we'd like to talk to you about now around next steps and holding a retreat. Karen, would you like to maybe just share a little bit of thinking around that and what your ask is of the group?
Okay, now I'm going to have to jog my memory about what we talked about, Heidi.
I'll help you out.
Okay, yes, thank you. So, there's a lot of different options we can have for a retreat, but really with the idea of trying to get this strategic plan, in its final form and submitted in a reasonable time frame. What we are looking at doing, and I think there's a slide if that can be shown on the screen, is kind of parallel pathing between now and the retreat, so that we have the really something that's meaty and rich for us to be able to work on and make substantial progress on our priorities. And I don't see that timeline on my screen, which may mean that it's just my Zoom not showing up properly. There we go. Yes. So we thank you for the next step. So I'll do a report out on December 10th of this meeting. We still need to finalize the priorities. We still need to move on to key action steps that we're going to take based on those priorities. And that would be the primary focus of the retreat for us, if we can do that.
Karen, did you want to ask for volunteers from any of the
I definitely do. Please do not leave without volunteering. We need help, planning. I've I really appreciate. Brian has been awesome. I don't know how he's doing it, but he's been really focused on the strategic planning effort, Cord as well. But we certainly need the committee members to participate to help us get it organized. The more people we have doing it, the less work on each of us, and I think a more energized and helpful retreat we will have. So do I have any hands raised?
My challenge is I can't be at the meeting on the 10th. So I would be a little behind some catch up, but if conditionally there was something that I could be helpful with, please let me know.
What I'm thinking is that sometime, and I realize we have the holidays coming up, but hopefully we can meet briefly before the holidays kick in after the December 10th meeting, and then have another short meeting before the retreat for planning purposes. Does that
I love
strike
short
you?
as an action word.
Yes. Does that sound good to you, Heidi?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
A planning meeting prior to the holidays and then another in January for us to firm up our agenda.
Yes.
A little work in between.
Yep.
That sounds great, Karen. And Jenna, it'd be great to have you join in.
Not
How about
everybody
you,
says
Davidi?
that.
This is Janine. I'm happy to help.
Great, thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
And if you can stay on for a few moments after this call so that we can put some times on the calendar, that will probably save Melissa a lot of headache doing one of those surveys.
Awesome. Awesome. Great. Well, how about as we wind down, just would love to hear any closing reflections that you have on these 4 priorities and the timeline that's in front of you. Just if you have any closing reflections or thoughts before we close, and then a few of us will put our calendars together. Just love to hear from you as committee members where we are today.
So we're trying to get this rolled out to the group by March. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Melissa, if you could go to I think it's slide number 3 is the timeline.
Right.
Actually, who's presenting? Cord? Can you
Got it.
do that?
Or would you mind putting the timeline up? I think it's slide number 3. Thank you.
Thank you.
There you are, Tabiti. It's kind of a timeline, March being that.
I just couldn't remember. Okay.
It's all right, yeah. With the idea of having a retreat in February for the subcommittee to really dive deeper into these 4 priorities and mapping out some specific actions under each one. Great.
So that's like an 8-hour retreat. We've done this before. Is that what you're thinking of?
Hopefully it's shorter because Zoom is exhausting after about 3. So hopefully it's shorter than 8, but I can't make any promises.
That was my next question. Are we talking about by Zoom or in person?
It will be on some platform, probably Zoom, but we can. There's a couple of that I've been looking at that might be a little bit more interactive, a little easier to do for a retreat, but I haven't tested them out yet.
You know, hopefully things will be loosened up a bit by then. Maybe we can do an in-person option.
That'd be beautiful. That's a beautiful wish.
That is.
Wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, unfortunately, they're forecasting a surge on top of a surge, so I'm hoping people are good over the holidays and we don't have it.
A quick question: is the retreat going to be just the strategic planning committee, or is it a full council retreat?
It would be a full council retreat.
Okay. All right, that's what I thought. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen, for that clarification, and Cord. Thank you for that. Good. So great. Other closing reflections on these 4 priorities and the timeline in front of you? Any closing reflections or thoughts for the work you've just finished today and where we are today?
I think we're moving in a good direction. That's my comment.
Thanks, Judy. It continues to get a little clearer each time. The priorities do. Great.
Janet put this into the conversation in our small group, and I'm just appreciating the reminder about the and I'm the youth. I think they're the sort of youth development principles, Janet. Resiliency piece. We've been thinking about that internally, so we are with you. We want to figure out ways to use that information as a kind of a platform for our grant making and other work. So just appreciating that.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay. All right, everyone. I think we can wind down, and Janine and Janet and Karen, if you wouldn't mind staying, we'll put our planning time on the calendar so we can maximize our efficiencies here. Others, thank you so much for taking time today and your continued insight, expertise, and contribution to the development of these priorities. It's good work. I hope you have a wonderful December, and we'll be hoping for in-person here. We're going to hold on to that wish at some point in time. All right, thanks everyone.
Thanks, Heidi.
Karen, you got my note, right? Okay.
Thanks, Heidi.
Thanks, everyone.
Host.
See some of you next week.
Stay on with everybody.
I'm gonna bow out of this part.
The scheduling part, Brian? Okay.
I mean, unless you need me.
No, Melissa's got access to that calendar of yours.
Yeah, that little thing.
Yeah. Thank you, Brian. Thank you.
Bye, Brian.
Aaron, we'll catch up later to try to get me up to speed. Okay.
Awesome. Thanks, Justin. Thank you. All right. Okay, Karen, calendars.
Yes.
So we're probably.
I'm pretty flexible. Generally Tuesdays and Thursdays at 11 a.m. are not good because I go live for my startup on those days. But outside of that, I can usually switch things around.
Okay.
So are you talking about 30 minutes or?
That would be my hope. Would be 30 minutes, just kind of getting more of a, let's get organized, let's figure out what needs to be done, and
So you're
get
thinking
a
like
calendar.
the week of the 14th?
Yeah, that would be ideal.
Okay.
I'm super flexible on Tuesday and Wednesday of that week, the 15th and the 16th, but I can make anything else work.
That Wednesday is flexible for me.
Sure.
I would be available super early or at 2:30.
2:30 works for me.
Works for me.
That's fine.
How about, do we need to have Brian or Cord with us, Karen?
That would be really helpful. One or both, at least one, if not both.
Yeah.
For Wednesday,
and that's 2:30.
Right. For Wednesday the 16th, there's a governor's education cabinet meeting that Brian is in. I could double check to see how if he needs to absolutely be in that. And Cord has a 3 o'clock on that day. If you all are available that morning, they could do an 8 o'clock anytime probably between 8 and 10. They could do if Wednesday morning works.
That can work for me.
Yeah,
that would work for me. Yeah.
I like that.
Okay,
Maybe-
great. Let's do that. So that is Wednesday the 16th.
Do you want to do like a 8:30?
That would be perfect.
Does that work for y'all?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, and you'll send a Zoom invite.
For half an hour, right?
Yep, half an hour. We're gonna get in and get out, right?
All right. Great. Jeannie and Janet, thanks so much for joining into this process.
Thank you.
Really
Thank
super
you so
fun.
much.
I'm excited. I'm excited about the direction we're heading. So
Awesome.
in many ways.
Yep. Good job.
Yeah.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
We'll see you in a couple weeks.
All right.
You got it.
Bye, everybody.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks.